Arthur, for God's sake, pick up the phone. I know you're there. The whole damn system is frozen. The voice on my voicemail was high-pitched, laced with a panic I'd never heard before. It was Marcus Thorne, the 32-year-old wunderkind CTO of Sterling Financial, the firm I'd worked at for 41 years before he politely showed me the door 3 weeks ago. My name is Arthur Finch. I'm 64 years old, and until recently, I was the sole custodian of a 40-year-old COBOL system that quietly processed several $1 trillion in transactions every year. I listened to message again, letting the frantic energy of it fill my quiet study. I didn't pick up. Instead, I took a sip of my Earl Grey tea and looked out the window at my garden. The roses were coming in nicely this year. Arthur, this isn't a joke. His second message, a minute later, was practically a shriek. The markets are in a nosedive, and Athena is throwing errors we've never seen before. We're locked out. The IPO is tomorrow. You have to come in. Name your price, anything, just get down here. I smiled faintly. Anything. He had no idea what that word was about to cost him. I deleted the messages, set my phone to silent, and went back to my book. Marcus Thorne thought he was dealing with a retired programmer he'd cast aside. He was about to learn he was dealing with the one man on earth who knew where all the bodies were buried, because I was the one who dug the graves. It all started 6 months ago when Marcus was hired. He strode into the company with a Stanford MBA, a portfolio of failed but impressive startups, and a deep-seated contempt for anything that wasn't built on a cloud-based microservice architecture. I was introduced to him in a meeting as the guy who keeps the lights on. Arthur Finch, he'd said, shaking my hand with a grip that was meant to convey dominance. Right, the COBOL guy. Heard a lot about you. He didn't say it like a compliment. He said it like a diagnosis. Our core transaction system, which I had named Athena back in 1983, was his primary target. To him, Athena was an embarrassment, a relic, a dinosaur that was holding the company back from a multi-billion-dollar IPO. Investors want to see a modern tech stack, Arthur, he'd explained in that first meeting, talking to me like I was a child. They want to see scalability, agility, the cloud. They don't want to see a mainframe that's older than I am. That mainframe has processed every single transaction for this company for 40 years without a single catastrophic failure. I'd replied calmly, it's not pretty, but it's flawless. He just smiled. We're building its replacement. Project Chimera. It's going to be revolutionary. I'd seen a dozen revolutionary projects in my time. They all ended the same way. Over budget, behind schedule, and quietly abandoned, while I worked through the weekend making sure Athena kept the company solvent. But Marcus was different. He had the board's ear and a budget that could fund a moon mission. He hired a team of coders who were all half my age and twice as arrogant. They worked in a glass-walled office with beanbag chairs and free kombucha, building their flashy new system, while I sat in my quiet basement office, listening to the familiar hum of the mainframe. I tried to warn him. Marcus, I said in a meeting 3 months ago, I've looked at the architecture for Chimera. It's not going to handle the transaction volume, especially during a high-volatility market event. He'd wave me off. Don't worry about it, Arthur. My team knows what they're doing. Besides, we'll run Athena in parallel for the first few weeks, just to be safe. That's when I knew things were going to go very, very wrong. You can't just run a system like Athena in parallel. It wasn't a plug-and-play device. It was a living organism, a complex web of code I've been tending to for 4 decades. There were undocumented patches, handwritten notes and logbooks from 1995, quirks and eccentricities that only I understood. I'd spent years meticulously documenting everything I could, but as I told him that day, the documentation is not the system. He just nodded, a dismissive look in his eyes that said, "Okay, old man, thanks for your input." 2 months later, he called me into his office. "Arthur," he began, with the fake sincerity of a used car salesman, "we decided to accelerate your retirement package. The board is incredibly grateful for your decades of service, and we want you to enjoy a long, happy retirement." It wasn't a request. It was an order. My last day would be in 2 weeks. They wanted me to hand over all my documentation and notes to the Chimera team. I did. I gave him every binder, every schematic, every password. I even spent a week with their lead developer, a kid named Kevin who at least had the decency to look terrified. They're stealing your life's work, I said to my wife, Helen, that night. And they're going to crash and burn because they're too arrogant to listen. Helen, who had seen me through more late-night system crises than I could count, just squeezed my hand. Then let them, she said. You've given that company enough of your life. My retirement party was a sad affair in the company cafeteria. Marcus gave a speech about passing the torch to a new generation and handed me a gold watch. I shook hands, accepted the awkward hugs, and walked out of that building for the last time without looking back. I felt a strange sense of peace. I had built Athena. I had warned them about the consequences of replacing her. The rest was up to them. The first week of my retirement was bliss. I worked in my garden, read history books, and took Helen out for lunch. I didn't think about Sterling Financial once. Then, on a Tuesday afternoon, my personal cell phone rang. It was Kevin, the young developer I'd trained. Mr. Finch? Arthur? I'm sorry to bother you at home, he whispered, his voice trembling. I'm calling from my personal phone. We're in big trouble. I sat down in my study. What kind of trouble, Kevin? It's Chimera. It's a disaster. It can't handle the test loads. It's crashing every few hours. We're supposed to be running fully on it by now, but we're not. Marcus has us secretly routing 100% of the live transactions through Athena. I wasn't surprised. So the parallel run is just a facade? Completely, Kevin said, his voice cracking. But that's not the worst part. He's ordering us to fake the performance reports for the investors, making it look like Chimera is handling everything perfectly. The IPO is next week, and the whole thing is built on a lie. I closed my eyes. This was worse than I thought. This wasn't just incompetence anymore. This was fraud. But there's more, Kevin said, his voice dropping even lower. Athena, she's acting up. Since your last patch, there have been these small, cascading memory leaks. Nothing critical yet, but my projections show that if we have a major market event, something with more than 1 billion transactions in an hour, the whole system will seize up. A total freeze. I knew exactly what he was talking about. A tiny, almost imperceptible bug I'd been tracking for months. A ghost in the machine that only appeared under extreme stress. I had a manual patch for it. A sequence of commands that had to be entered at precisely the right moment to reallocate memory and prevent the cascade failure. It wasn't in the documentation. It was in my head. Does Marcus know? I asked. I tried to tell him. He said I was being paranoid. He told me not to worry about the Dinosaur system and focus on faking the Chimera reports. I took a deep breath. Kevin, thank you for telling me this. You did the right thing. Now, I want you to email me a summary of everything you just said from a personal, anonymous account. And then you need to stay out of it. Understand? Yes, sir, he said, the relief in his voice palpable. After we hung up, I sat in my study for a long time. I had Kevin's email, a detailed account of securities fraud. I had the knowledge of the ticking time bomb inside Athena. And I had Marcus Thorne, the arrogant CTO who thought he'd put me out to pasture. He hadn't just fired me. He had armed me. I spent the next few days preparing. I contacted a lawyer who specialized in corporate whistleblowing. Just to understand my options, I secured my own finances. And I watched the global markets, waiting for the storm I knew was coming. It came on a Wednesday morning, exactly 2 days before Sterling Financial's IPO. A sudden interest rate hike in Asia triggered a massive sell-off in European markets, which then cascaded into Wall Street. It was the once-in-a-decade market event I'd always prepared for, the kind of day that made or broke financial institutions, the kind of day Athena was built for, and the kind of day her hidden flaw would be fatally exposed. My phone started ringing at 9:30 a.m. It was Marcus. I let it go to voicemail. He called again. And again, the 4th time I picked up. Arthur, thank God, he said. The panic barely contained his voice. I need you to come in. Right now. I'm retired, Marcus. I said calmly. I know, but it's an emergency. Athena is, She's not responding. We have a total transaction freeze. I seem to recall you telling me Chimera was handling the live load. I said, letting the silence hang in the air. He stammered for a moment. We had a temporary issue. We had to fall back to Athena. It's just for today. But something's wrong. You're the only one who can fix it. I see, I said. I pictured him in his glass office. The beanbag chairs now feeling ridiculous as his career evaporated around him. I'm not an employee anymore, Marcus. If you want my help, you'll need to hire me as a consultant. Fine. Yes. Whatever you want. What's your rate? He asked desperately. I paused, savoring the moment. My consulting fee, I said, my voice even and clear, is $1 million for first hour, non-negotiable, and I'll need it wired to my account before I leave my house. The silence on the other end of the line was profound. I could hear the faint sounds of people shouting in the background of his office. $1 million, he sputtered. For an hour? That's insane. That's extortion. No, Marcus, I replied. That's the price of 41 years of experience. You have my bank details. The clock is ticking. He started to yell, a stream of curses and threats about how he'd sue me, how he'd ruin me, how I'd never work again. You already took care of that last part, I said quietly and hung up the phone. I knew he wouldn't pay. His ego wouldn't allow it. He'd try to get his own team to fix it. He'd fail. I turned on the financial news. The anchors were already reporting on unprecedented trading halts at a major, unnamed financial firm. By noon, Sterling Financial was named. Their stock, which had been climbing in anticipation of the IPO, plummeted 40% in an hour. By 3 p.m., the headline was everywhere. Sterling Financial IPO canceled amid catastrophic system failure. CTO Marcus Thorne fired. I watched the news report from the comfort of my armchair. They showed a picture of Marcus leaving the building, his face pale and drawn, hounded by reporters. He looked so much older than 32. He'd built his career on buzzwords and bravado, and it had been dismantled by a few hundred lines of 40-year-old code he'd been too arrogant to respect. The next day, I forwarded Kevin's email to my lawyer, who then passed it to the SEC. An official investigation was launched into the fraudulent reports. The board cleaned house. The fallout was immense, but it was contained. The company would survive, humbled and scarred. A week later, I received a call from the CEO of a rival bank, a man I'd known professionally for years. Arthur, he said, I heard you're officially on the market. We're putting together a new technology oversight committee for our board of directors. We need someone who understands that the most important part of any system isn't the code, but the experience of the people who run it. Would you be interested? I accepted. 6 months have passed. The investigation at Sterling is ongoing. Marcus Thorne is facing federal charges. I attend my board meetings twice a quarter, offering advice that people actually listen to. The pay is excellent, but the real compensation is the respect. Sometimes, when I'm working in my garden, I think about Athena. I imagine her still humming away in that cold basement, tended to now by a new generation of programmers who, I hope, learn a valuable lesson about humility. You can't just throw away decades of experience because it looks old. Some things, like good code and the people who understand it, are timeless. Marcus Thorne called me a dinosaur. He was right. Dinosaurs ruled the earth for a very, very long time, and when they fell, they left a crater big enough for everyone to see.